Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned the privilege of your subscription. And of course, to everyone who's watching out there, if you enjoy this video or get anything out of it, I would appreciate it if you would take 1/1000th of a second to click that thumbs up button. That way, YouTube will pay me a little bit more. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to continue with the work that I started in the last episode, which, if you'll remember, I created a full-size, full-scale, top view drawing of a guitar body in Adobe Illustrator. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that drawing and I'm going to import it into Rhinoceros version 7 for the Macintosh, and I'm going to create a full-size, full-scale 3D model of the guitar body. And that's something that will be used later on in the CNC process. Now, as a reminder, this is all part of a series that I'm doing where I'm going to be building a 6-string multi-scale fan fret guitar. So let's jump on the computer and get started. Okay, so what you see here is a new project that I've created in Rhino 7 for the Mac. And when you create a new project, it always shows 4 different views: perspective, top, front, and right. I typically like to work just in perspective. That's where I do most of my work. I occasionally will switch between these different views, but most of the work is done in perspective. So I'll go up here to the top corner, top left corner, and I will click perspective. And that brings me into the perspective viewport. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the Illustrator file that I drew for the body. And this I created in the last video, the last episode. So I will select that, click open. And the options that come up, the only one that's of real concern is the preserve units option. Most 3D programs use their own unit as a measurement, and a unit really has no definition to it. So when you, in Rhino, when you want to create a new project, you can assign a dimension, or you can assign a standard for what that unit is going to be. And in this case, I'm using inches, and I'm telling Rhino that I want 1 inch to equal 1 Rhino unit. Now, this is going to depend on what you feel comfortable working in, whether it's millimeters or inches. It also will depend on other software programs that you may be using to establish your tool paths. So you'll have to kind of play around and see how those, how your measurement systems work together. And I've come to the conclusion in my workflow that inches is best because I can import it directly into Meshcam and it comes in the correct sizes, and I can establish my tool paths without having to modify anything. So I'll click import, and there you have the drawing as it is imported into this 3D workspace. As you can see, it's lying flat on the surface. Now this L-shaped line here, this is part of the bounding box, and it's only showing the bottom and the leftmost edges of that bounding box. It doesn't show the right or the top. This is a glitch in Rhino. I think it started with Rhino 7. I didn't notice it in Rhino 5 or 6. It would always, in Rhino 5 or 6, it would always import the entire box. But for some reason in Rhino 7, it's leaving out the right side and the top. So I hope they fix that for Rhino 7. And perhaps they fixed it for Rhino 8. I don't know. I haven't upgraded yet. So what I'll do is I don't need this right now. But the whole purpose of the bounding box is to position the drawing so that the lower left corner of the bounding box is right on the X, Y, 0 position. That way, no matter what program I'm using, as long as it recognizes the X, Y, 0 position, it's always going to position the elements in the same place. So if I'm doing a 3D carving here, a 3D model, and that will be used to do 3D carving in CNC. If I'm doing 2D carving using a different program, I know that everything is going to line up perfectly because of this bounding box. But for now, since I'm building this model, I don't need it, so I'll just delete it. The next thing I have to do is I have to select all the elements. And what I'm going to do ultimately is move just the elements that are going to be required for forming the top of the front of the guitar up to their to the height that I want this guitar to, the thickness of this guitar. So in this case, I want this guitar to be 1 3/4 inches thick. So I'm going to raise the top elements, just the top elements, up 1 3/4 inches from this plane that we're working on here. So with all the elements selected, I'm just going to hold down the Command key and deselect the elements that I don't need and keep just the elements for the front of the guitar that I will need. So all of the back elements will be deselected. So now I have just the front elements, the neck pocket, pickup pockets, bridge mounting, pilot holes, and the holes for the controls, and then the perimeter where the bevel will start on the top of the guitar. So what I'll do is I'll click the blue arrow and I will type 1.75 inches. And that raises this up to 1.75 inches. Okay. Now, this outer perimeter shape actually represents where the bevel starts. It's the border of the top flat surface, but it's right where the bevel will start, because this guitar is going to have a bevel that goes all the way around the perimeter of the guitar. Now, to indicate where the end of the bevel is, the depth of the bevel, I have to select this next line here. This is a perimeter line. And I'm going to make a copy and I'm going to raise that up, and it's going to stop short of the top. So I want it to stop at the depth of the bevel. And in this case, I want my bevel to be 1/2 inch deep from the top of the body down to the sides. So I'm going to raise this up to be 1/2 inch below this top. So if the top of the body is 1 3/4 inches high, then this needs to be 1/2 inch below that, or 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to hold down the Option key to make a copy. I'm going to click the blue arrow and I'm going to type 1.25 inches, and that raises that line up. And as you can see, it's 1/2 inch below the top, and that's where the bevel meets the side perimeter of the guitar body. Now, the rest of the lines that I haven't moved, that are down here lying flat on the surface plane, that represents the back of the guitar. However, it's going to have a bevel as well, and I want that bevel to be 1/2 inch deep. So I'm going to select that perimeter line, and I'm going to click the blue arrow and type 0.5 and raise it up 1/2 inch. So now I have the surface formed, or I have the perimeter of that bevel. And this will also form the sides, and you can sort of see how the structure is starting to build out. Now, as you're working in 3D programs, you'll notice, or you'll learn, that there are limitations to what you can do as far as building your 3D models. And in the case of Rhino, I know that I cannot surface around a sharp corner like the end of the upper and lower horns on the front of this guitar. I have to do those bevels as separate shapes, one for around the perimeter of the body and then one for the inner cutaway portion, because it can't wrap around a sharp corner like this. But I have to finish out that sharp edge by drawing a line between each of the defining polylines. So I will draw those lines like you see me doing here, and that forms that edge, and it kind of closes in this area. So then I'll do the same thing on the upper horn as well. Okay, so now I have the corners, the edges of those sharp points defined. So now what I need to do is I need to start filling the structure with surface. And I'll start by doing the top. And I will select that perimeter line, and then I will go over to my left menu and I will select surface from planar curves. And that works on flat surfaces, whether they're vertical or horizontal. If they're angled or curved, it won't work. It only works on flat surfaces. But as you can see, we're still looking at the wireframe view here. We can't see the surface. But if I go up here to this menu, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click it once. We can see now that surface shape. Okay, so I can also do the back as well. This is the bottom flat surface of the back. So I will just go here, do planar curves, and we now see our back surface. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to start surfacing the bevel and then the perimeter sides. But here's the thing. The experience has taught me, as I said before, that I need to do these in segments because I can't wrap around this sharp corner. I also know that where the front neck pocket is going to be positioned, I need to separate the surfaces in order to build this out correctly. This is stuff that you kind of learn through experience of doing it. You'll make a lot of mistakes and wonder, why isn't this working? And then as you watch videos like this, you'll start to figure out possible solutions. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to break all these lines into separate segments. But then I have to rejoin them, as I will explain here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the upper left menu to where it says to the explode icon, and I will click that once, and that breaks this line into separate segments. They're all still selected, but they're separate. And then what I'll do is I'll hold down the command key and I will deselect these segments just on the front part of the guitar where the cutaways are and where the neck pocket is. So I have just these lines around the rest of the perimeter selected, but they're still separate segments and I want to join them together. So I'll press J on the keyboard and then return, and that links them all back together. Then I will do the same thing on the next line down below. I will explode it, deselect these elements, then I will press J and rejoin the rest of these lines. Do the next line down below that, explode it, deselect the elements, then I will click J and then return. And then I will come down to the very bottom one and do the same there. Explode it, deselect the curves at the front, and then join the rest back together again. Now what I have to do is I have to draw some structure lines. So I'm going to select the polyline tool, and I'm going to, what I want to do, and it might be easier just as I need to join this end here with this end here. So I'm going to select this line so I can see where the line is. And I'm going to grab my poly tool, click over here to where it says endpoint intersection. I'm going to bring this down to where it says end intersection not. I'll left click, right click. And now I've drawn a line. And what that's going to do is it's going to form the boundary for this shape that's going to be forming that bevel on the cutaway. Then I have to draw another polyline from this section down to this section here. And on this side, I need to do the same thing. So I'm going to select this curve just so it's easy to see. Go from that end down to this end. Then I will go from that end down to See where it says end perpendicular knot, end perpendicular intersection knot. Now I have those lines defined. What I can do now is I can select these curves, and then I'm going to join them together. So I'll hit J and return. Then I will do the same with this line here. J and return. And then this one down here. J and return. And then I will do the same thing on the upper horn. Select these different elements. Click J and return. Select these lines. J and return. And then these lines. J and return. Now what I can do is I can start to fill this area. So I will select this top curve, the bottom curve for that shape, and then the end lines for that shape. And then I will come over here and select network of curves, and that forms the curve for that. Okay. Then I will do the same on this side. Select that, select that. Network of curves. Boom. See how we're getting this shape in here? And we can select this curve, this curve, this curve, and this curve. Network of curves, and we get that shape. And we'll do this curve, this curve, this curve, and then this curve. Network of curves. Now for the bottom, I'm going to select these curves. And I'm going to join those together. Then I can select this curve, this curve, this curve, and this curve, and I can join those together. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to select this curve, this curve, this curve, and this curve. And then we will do network of curves. So we have that part of the bevel. Now what I can do is I can select the top bevel curves and surface those. So we have the top bevel. Then I will grab the next curve, this curve, that one, and form. This is the vertical perimeter surface. Then I can grab the bottom, so now you can see we have the basic elements created in this space. Okay, so I'm back in Illustrator, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine the depth of my neck pocket using the side view elevation drawing of my guitar. So I'm going to zoom in to this area here, and this is where the neck fits into the body. And I know that this line is the depth of the neck pocket, and that is 0.9219 inches deep. So what I have to do is I have to make the neck pocket that depth. So I will select the neck pocket itself. And then I'm going to use a surface extrude tool straight, and I'm going to go down, so it's going to be minus 0.9219. And then I will hit OK. And that forms the basis of the pocket. But what I have to do as well is I have to move this top drawing line, the poly line, down to the bottom of the pocket, because that's what's going to be used to form the bottom surface. So I'll move that down minus 0.9219. Okay, because there's no surface there. But with that poly line now in position, I can use the surface from planar curves, and that creates the nice surface. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to remove these front portions of that pocket. So I'm going to select the sides of the pocket, that extrusion that I just created, and I'm going to explode it. So now they're separate segments. And I can delete this one. And now you can see I have the basic form of the pocket. I can get rid of these lines if I want to, because I don't need them anymore. So I'll just select them and delete them. But what I need to do is I need to fill this little space in here. So I'm going to grab that curve and I'm going to explode it again. And then I will just select those elements that I need. And I will click join. Then I'm going to do a surface extrude straight, and I will bring it up to where it snaps to that position, and that forms the front part of the pocket. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start forming the pickup pockets. So I'll start by selecting the polylines that form the shape of the pickup pocket. And then I'm going to come up here to solid extrude planar curve. This is going to extrude a solid block of material. Now I'm going to do this, I'm extruding this down into the body, so it has to be a minus. Now if you look at the upper left corner, you can see the dialog box where it says extrusion distance. I'm going to type minus 0.875, or 7/8 of an inch. That's how deep I like to make my humbucker pickup pockets. Then I'll hit return, and I have formed the basis of that pocket. You can't see it. It's underneath that surface. And the yellow line that you see is still the poly line that's been selected. I don't need it anymore, so I can just delete it. But now you can see where those surfaces, or where the extrusions intersect the surface. So the way this works is I will select that extrusion, and then I'm going to explode it. So I go over here to the left menu and to the left toolbar, and I hit explode. Now with it all still selected, I'm going to go right into the middle of this surface area. I'm going to hold down the command key and I'm going to press once. That deselects just the top surface of that shape. So then I will come back over here to the left toolbar and I will click join. Okay. Now I can deselect it by clicking outside this area, come back in here and select just that top surface by itself, and then I will delete it. Then I will select that poly surface, and I will go back over here to my left toolbar and I will click trim. And right in the middle of that area, I'm going to click once, and that deletes the surface over the top of the pickup pocket. I'll click done, and now you can see I have created my neck pickup pocket. So I will do the same back here. I'm going to select the extrusion. I'm going to explode it. I'm going to hold down the command key, deselect the top. Then I'm going to come back over here to the left toolbar and click join. Then I'm going to click outside to deselect. And I'm going to click just the surface, and I'm going to delete it. And I will select the poly surface, the extrusion, and then I'm going to come over here to my left toolbar, click trim, click in the middle of it, click done, and now I have created the bridge pocket. So now I've got these little circles here. These indicate the pilot holes for the mounting screws. And of course, they're in the wrong position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop those down into the neck pocket to the bottom. So down minus 0.875. So now they are at the very bottom. Now I have to decide how deep I want those holes to be drilled. Well, if we're 7/8 of an inch deep, we're limited to how deep we can make it before they pop out the back of the body. So just to play it safe, I'm going to do 1/2 inch. So I will come up to solid, extrude planar curve straight, and I will, if you look at that left dialog where it says extrusion distance, and I will type minus 0.5. And that creates an extrusion that represents the pilot hole. So I can delete those circles, and as you can see, there's an indication of the circles, which is actually the extrusion intersecting the top surface. So I will select those. Extrusion, this extrusion, this extrusion, and then this extrusion. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode them. Now we have to zoom in here. So I'll hold down the command key, deselect that top. And I will zoom in on this one, deselect that top. Deselect that top, and then deselect that top. Then I can click join, and now they're all joined together. So then I go back in and I select just that top and delete it. Then I will select just the poly surfaces. It can be kind of challenged to do this. Then I will grab my trim tool, go right in the center of that top part and delete it, and that removes the surface from right over the top of that hole. And then we have the pilot holes for mounting the pickups. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the bridge mounting screws. And those are going to be 1 inch deep. So I'm going to do an extrude planar curve straight, minus 1 inch. And then I can delete the polylines. I'll see if I can select all these. Yeah, well, almost. So now I have the bridge holes selected. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to explode them again. Load them. And I'm going to have to zoom in here. I will deselect just the top of each of these extrusions. Okay, now I will join them back together. Then I will select just the top. Then I will select each poly surface again. And I will join them. Then I will grab my trim tool, zoom in, and just click inside those holes. And there we have the bridge mounting holes. Now we're going to work on the back. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select the large circles that represent the recess for the neck screw ferrules. And those need to be extruded 1/4 of an inch because that's how thick the ferrules are. So I'll do a solid extrude straight and I will extrude that 0.25 inches. And I will delete polylines and then I will select the extrusions. I will explode them. And I will deselect the top surface. I will join those elements back together. Then I will select just the top surface and delete it. And I will select the poly surface again. Use my trim tool to trim away the surface so that we can see the recess. And now you see the recess. Now I have to grab these circles that indicate the pilot holes for the screws themselves. I'm going to have to raise those up 1/4 of an inch. Then what I have to do is I have to extrude those up into the neck pocket itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go into this view. We're looking at the front of the guitar. I know it says back, but it's actually the front. We're going to do a surface extrude straight. And we're going to extrude it until it snaps to the top or to the bottom of the neck pocket. And then we will left click and that accepts it. So then we go to perspective and we don't need these lines anymore. the selected lines, so we'll delete those. Now we have these extrusions, but these are just surface extrusions. They're not a solid, because this is a hole that's drilled completely through. So I will zoom in, get my trim tool, and I will trim away the surface over the hole. And I will flip it over and do the same on the back. There. So now we have the holes for mounting the neck. Okay. Now we're going to do the control cavity. And there's several elements here. There's this outer line, which represents the recess for the shelf that the cover will sit on, because I like my covers to be recessed into the body. And then this shape is a natural indication of the shape of the pocket itself. Okay, so I have this selected. So what I need to do is I need to do a solid extrusion straight. I'm going to do 0.125. And I will delete that line. I will select the extrusion. I will explode the extrusion. And then I will command click right in the center of that area. Then I will join those remaining selected elements. Then I will deselect and then select that surface and delete it. Then I can select the extrusion, use my trim tool, click in the middle of it, and that deletes the surface. So now we have the recess. So now what I need to do is I need to select the elements for and then I need to raise those up 0.125 inches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this element, and I have to extrude it straight up to a depth that places the bottom of the cavity just below the surface, about 1/8 of an inch below the surface. So I've already raised that element up 1/8 of an inch. So I have to subtract 1/8 of an inch from 1.75, which is 1.625. Then I need to subtract another 1/8 of an inch, which represents the thickness of the top. So it becomes 1.5 inches. So I will extrude a straight curve, and I'm going to do this 1.5 inches. And now we have our extrusion in there. So then I can delete that line. I can select the extrusion, and then I'm going to explode it. Then I'm going to deselect the top, or actually, deselect that top part of the surface. I'm going to rejoin the elements. Then I'm going to select this surface and delete it. But then what I have to do is I have to select the poly surface, use my trim tool, and delete the pocket. So there you see I have the control cavity. Okay, so now what I need to do is drill the holes for the controls themselves, the pots and the switches. And to do that, I'm just going to do a surface extrude straight. I'm going to go down minus 0.125 inches. And then I can delete the polylines, and then I'll select the extrusions. I'll use my trim tool, click right in the center, and then right in the center here, and then I have drilled the holes. Oh, and I almost forgot. I got to put in the pilot holes for the control cavity cover. And that's really done pretty much the same way as I did the bridge mounting holes and the holes for mounting the pickups. I'll just select them, and I'm going to do a solid extrusion, but this time I think I'll do 0.375, 3/8 of an inch, because I use really short, tiny screws for attaching the control cavity cover, so it doesn't need to go any deeper than that. So I'll hit return, and then I can delete the circle lines. Then I will select those extrusions. And I will explode them. And I'm going to zoom in really close here because I need to deselect just the top. So I'll hold down Control and click on the center of that top part, or where the top of the hole, where it meets the recess shelf. And once I've just deselected those, I can then rejoin the remaining selected elements. Then I will select and delete that top surface. Then I will select the extrusions again. I'll zoom in again. I'm going to use my trim tool, click right in the middle, trim the surface over the hole. And that completes the guitar body. So what I'm going to do now is I will save this, and I'm just going to save this as 6-string fan fret guitar body. And then what I need to do is I need to export it as an STL file. So I will select STL, I'll keep the name the same, click export, and then under options here, I'm going to type 0.001 millimeters for my mesh options, for the tolerance mesh options. And I'll click OK. And I do a binary because it's a smaller file and there's no difference in quality from binary to ASCII. It's just a more compact file. And I'll export it. And that's all there is. Okay, guys, that's all the time I have for this episode. And in the next episode, I'm going to go to the next step, which is to start building the G-code files that I will use to cut out the fretboard, the neck, and the body on the CNC machine. And I think you'll find this interesting because I'm actually going to undo some of what I've just done. And I know that may not make sense, but as you tune in to the next episode, I think you'll understand. So as always, until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I hope to see you back here for the next episode.